We're joined on the line by Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence.
Thank you, Ben. Great to be back on the Ben Shapiro Show.
So let's talk about the fact that Joe Biden has now selected his vice presidential candidate in a decision that surprised very few people. It was Kamala Harris, the senator from California. So your thoughts on the person you will now be facing in the sole vice presidential debate?
I think the fact that Joe Biden named California liberal Senator Kamala Harris as his running mate confirms everything President Trump and I have been saying. That Joe Biden and the Democratic Party have been overtaken by the radical left. I mean, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris want higher taxes, socialized medicine, open borders, abortion on demand, and they support cutting funding to the police. I think Senator Kamala Harris actually said that it was time to reimagine the police department in the wake of all the violence that we're seeing in places like Portland and Seattle and New York City. And the president and I, by contrast, have a record of cutting taxes, rolling back regulations at an unprecedented level, unleashing American energy, standing up for the right to life, for the liberties that make this country great. And I promise you and your listeners, Ben, that we will always stand with the men and women who serve on the thin blue line of law enforcement. That's the choice. That's the contrast. But Joe Biden's selection of Senator Kamala Harris, just again, I just think it's an affirmation of everything that we've seen about the way the radical left is dominating the Democratic Party. That's the message I had in Iowa yesterday. We're going to take that message on the road next week to Wisconsin and Florida, all across this country, and all the way through victory on November 3rd.
Vice President Pence, there's been a lot of talk about how vice presidential selections generally don't affect elections overall, that it's top of the ticket election. I don't think that's the case this time. Biden has declared himself a transitional figure in the Democratic Party. By picking Kamala Harris, he's essentially said that he himself is a Trojan horse for Kamala Harris's ideology. 60% of Americans, according to a Rasmussen poll, are suspicious that Biden will not even finish his first term. How important do you think his VP pick actually is to the American people? Should it matter?
Well, I think Joe Biden's agenda of the radical left confirmed in his selection of someone who was recognized as the most liberal member of the United States Senate in 2019. Is the real issue here, Ben? I really believe that. If you want to know what Joe Biden is planning to transition us to in this country, you need to look no further than the unity agenda that he and Bernie Sanders unveiled about a month ago. I mean, the reality is where President Trump set this nation on a path of freedom and opportunity grounded in the principles of a strong military, free market economics, appointing conservatives to our courts at every level. The Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders unity agenda would set us inexorably on a path of socialism and decline. And so I think, as I said before, I think his selection of Senator Kamala Harris is just a confirmation of the path that Joe Biden and his candidacy were on from the point early in his campaign. I mean, it's an amazing thing. You know that I couldn't be more proud to serve alongside the most pro-life president in the United States. And Ben, I've always admired your strong stand for the sanctity of life. And Joe Biden was one of those Democrats throughout his career that while he said he supported abortion rights, that like many, he supported the Hyde Amendment, which prevented taxpayer dollars from being used to pay for abortions. But even that Joe Biden abandoned over the last year, that now he supports taxpayer funding of abortion, is calling for record increases in funding for Planned Parenthood of America. And it's just one issue after another where you see that Joe Biden and the Democratic Party have been overtaken by the radical left. That's why the choice in this election has never been clearer. The stakes have never been higher. And that's the message that the president, that his running mate that's talking to you right now are going to take all across this country. And I believe we're going to see a great victory come November 3rd.
Vice President Pence, how do you plan to pin down Kamala Harris on her position? So the media have already been shockingly attempting to portray her as moderate. The New York Times laughably called her a pragmatic moderate in its initial tweet about Kamala Harris. Again, she is the leftmost senator in the United States. They're trying to proclaim that she's actually of the center. But Kamala Harris has an extraordinary record of shifting her positions on everything from Medicare for all. She was for it before she was against it, before she was sort of for it, before she was against it again, to Joe Biden himself, who she essentially implied was a racist in open debate, who was attempting to stop her from attending an integrated school when she was a small child. Now, of course, he's a warrior for the people. How do you plan to pin Kamala Harris down when she has been so squishy on so many issues?
Well, my second favorite president is Abraham Lincoln. In fact, I have a portrait in my office here at the White House that was dated back from the days of his administration. Abraham Lincoln said it best, Ben. He said, "Give the people the facts and the republic will be saved." That's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to do with Joe Biden. That's what we're going to do with California liberal Senator Kamala Harris. We're just going to tell the American people where they want to go. I mean, it is an amazing thing to think about. I mean, here we are in the midst of a global pandemic. And we grieve for the loss of more than 160,000 Americans. We've been working 24 hours a day to have the testing, to have the equipment, to have the medical supplies, to have the medicines. We're driving relentlessly toward a vaccine. But what we're also doing is we're opening up America again. I mean, we've literally seen 9 million Americans go back to work and reclaim jobs in this economy. In the last 3 months alone, we're opening up our schools all across the country. But Joe Biden and Kamala Harris want to raise taxes by $4 trillion. They want to impose a $2 trillion version of the Green New Deal at a time when the American economy is recovering and we're adding jobs back at a historic pace. Their prescription alone for the economy would crush the vitality out of the recovery that's underway. And I just think presenting all of those facts, laying out the contrast in the choice in this election, I truly do believe that President Trump demonstrated in our first 3 years that we could be strong again, we could be prosperous again by advancing policies of less taxes, less regulation, more American energy, free and fair trade, standing on our highest constitutional principles of life and liberty and the Second Amendment. Their policies would not only crush the vitality out of this economy, but take us on a leftward turn of socialism and decline. And when we frame that choice for the American people, I'm very confident we're going to win 4 more years for President Donald Trump in the White House.
And Vice President Pence, how do you plan to fend off the attacks from the media that any critique of Kamala Harris is in fact a reflection of sexism and racism? We've seen this narrative being trotted out that if President Trump calls her phony, it's because it's a sexist or racist attack, that if he says her treatment of Brett Kavanaugh was nasty, which technically it was, that is a reflection of sexism and racism. How do you plan to fight back against those charges?
Well, we're gonna deal with the facts every single step of the way. And look, the media is going to do what the media is going to do. I have to tell you, I was chuckling the other day when I heard that the New York Times had done a story describing the most liberal member of the United States Senate as a moderate, as a pragmatic moderate, and then you saw newspapers and also their adherents on a couple of the major cable networks repeating the same language. But look, I think it kind of reminds me of what Groucho Marx said years ago. He said, "Who are you going to believe, me or your own eyes?" Right? I mean, the Democrats and the liberals in the media, want to say, "No, believe us," when we try and tell you, as now Joe Biden's campaign is trying to say that he's a moderate, but the American people see it. I mean, they see it. Plans to raise taxes by trillions of dollars. They see a march towards socialized medicine, a commitment to open borders and health benefits for illegal immigrants. They see it, abortion on demand, taxpayer funding of abortion. And I think most poignant of all, and you've talked a lot about this, Ben, but at a time when we see a rise of heartbreaking violence tearing apart our cities in New York and Seattle and Portland and Chicago, you've got Joe Biden. He's asked if he'd be willing to cut funding to law enforcement. He said, yes, absolutely. You have his running mate who said that it was time to, quote, reimagine law enforcement. I have to tell you that's when I was in Iowa yesterday, I was surrounded in a barn by law enforcement officers and their families. I believe with all of my heart that when we lay out that agenda when we stick to those facts, we give the American people a clear choice. They're going to choose to reelect President Donald Trump and support an agenda that made America great in 3 short years. It's going to make America great again with 4 more years.
Vice President Mike Pence, really appreciate your time. Congratulations on entering a politically target-rich environment. I appreciate it, and good luck, sir.
Thanks, Ben. Great to be back on the Ben Shapiro Show.
I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Ben Shapiro Show. If you did, go ahead and hit the subscribe button so you stay up to date on all of our future content.